The ESL and ELL program is an outdated program that does nothing to enrich and thrive the immigrant populations that we now have in our schools. I've seen the challenges as a former ELL student in 2012 myself as to how this program forces many of us to drop out and few of us to be able to thrive and graduate. The number of English language learners is currently higher than any other time in our history of the nation, and it's even higher in our schools and our classrooms. At the same time, the dropout rate of Latino students from secondary schools are highest among all minority groups, and many of the dropouts are ELL. What does that mean as an education system that we look back and see that one of our largest populations is also one of our largest dropout groups? How do we fix this, and where is this outdated idea coming from? Our programs are based off of perspective of why do newly immigrated students need special treatment when their great-grandfather was able to provide and support children through school back in the 19th, 20th century. We now have to look at these programs through a historical, social, and economic context. Current immigrant students face social and economic realities that differ sharply from the past. They're coming from U.S. wars and policies that have left them broken and traumatized. They're coming from crime, from poverty, from things that will not allow them to come back home. They're coming back into an era where immigration is not seen as something that's wanted. It's seen as something that's destructive. And they're facing racism and discrimination, these realities that further their trauma and further their ability to not feel welcome and unequipped to be in these schools. On top of that, we have certain policies such as 227 in California and 203 in Arizona that has limited the resources available to ELL students. For example, the impact of Proposition 227 on 16 school districts in California found that ELL students are more likely to be taught by non-credentialed teachers and no systemic professional development was in place. We also see programs to be continuously taught in a form of assimilation, not something to keep ELL students in their culture and to have dignity in their culture, but to force them to assimilate and quicken this pace of assimilation, to give up a part of identity that is so crucial to who they are. And the critical question here is, how then can Latino students preserve a sense of dignity as Spanish speakers in an English-speaking world? That is, how can they present themselves as competent, intelligent, resourceful, and valuable when so many interactions they engage in with the outside world render them incapable, limited, underprepared victims of cultural deprivation? In my own experience as an ELL student, I also struggled with this idea of passing, of trying to assimilate and try to be as white as I possibly can, because that's what I was taught to look at as the main form of assimilation in my classroom, to look at white historical leaders, to look at the white students at my school, to be able to talk like them, to be able to socially connect like them, because the more I was like them, the more I would be accepted. The more I was like them, the easier I was going to be able to pass in school, when that wasn't the reality. Many of us struggled because these classrooms were ill-equipped. These teachers were not prepared to teach us. These teachers struggled to connect with us in ways that we needed that connection. We didn't have that same affirmation that other students have, and we struggled with that. We floundered and we failed, and there wasn't a pick-me-back situation that allowed many of us to get back up. When we fell, we fell. And with that, we dropped out. And a lot of us didn't come back. And this happens in a lot of programs. This happens with a lot of ELL students. We're forced to be in these tiny classrooms for hours on end with teachers that have no preparation whatsoever to be able to be teaching these classes. We're being put in a certain area and perspective that we have to assimilate, that we have to give up what we came to this country to be. We have to give up who we really are to be something that we're not. We're taught that what we know, what our language is shameful, that the color of our skin determines who we are and what our success will be, and we're taught that from day one. In my research, I also saw that oftentimes feelings of being unequipped may trigger defensive reactions that are damaging not just to the students, as well to the ethos of the classrooms and schools. This being that oftentimes teachers will feel this defensiveness and with that treat their ELL students differently. Oftentimes, the assumptions and attitudes about ELL students held by pre-service teachers applied with the often limited preparation middle school teachers and high school teachers receive in literacy and second language acquisition are also likely to spell disaster for ELL students. We have these programs in teacher preparation that only teach maybe a week or two of second language preparation, and it leaves these teachers out in the field where their classrooms are not the ideal way that they want it to be. And there has to be this stop of thinking that classrooms are going to be the way that they want them to be, that they're going to be these imaginary ideal rooms where everything's going to work out. And that's not the case. We're in a new era where immigrant students are the highest population, and we have to be equipped to be able to prepare them. Some solutions can be more meaningful homework that will engage the students in their work. Systemic changes such as better programs for teachers and districts providing better communication between families and teachers and within students. Teachers taking the time to get to know their students, taking the time to know who they are and implement who they are and their identities into the classroom to make them feel welcomed. Empathy, cariño, and greater understanding of the daily challenges that these students face beyond those they experience in school is also essential for creating a community of learners. And being sensitive to the needs of these students does not mean to feel sorry or to look down or to lower expectations or to water down their language or the curriculum. But it means to have higher expectations for them, to make them work their best, to support them and push them to do and be who they are. It doesn't mean to take pity because these students are just as strong as your proficient English ones. We are just as strong of a community and we have dreams like everyone else, and we should be supported to have those dreams like everyone else. And that's the point of this presentation. That's the point of this digital story, to tell others that we have this space, that we need to fix this problem, and we need to have more resources for immigrant students. We need to start pushing them to challenge themselves. We need to have more empathy and more greater understanding in our classrooms. We need to start pushing for more systemic changes within our schools and our districts. And we need to build more community assets and links, because that's where it all begins, with the family and with the student and with the teacher in the classroom together. That's